The most dangerous mistake a person can make is deciding someone is unimportant before learning who they really are. On a bright Monday morning in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, City Hall buzzed with the usual rhythm of government business. Residents waited in long lines carrying paperwork. Employees hurried through marble hallways balancing coffee cups and folders. Phones rang behind reception desks while city officials moved between conference rooms preparing for an important afternoon meeting. To most people, it looked like an ordinary day. But before the morning was over, one decision made near the front entrance would change everything. Evelyn Carter stepped through the revolving glass doors carrying a simple leather folder tucked beneath her arm. She wore a modest navy blazer, comfortable shoes, and no jewelry except a small silver watch. Nothing about her appearance suggested wealth, status, or influence. She looked like what most people would assume she was, an ordinary mother trying to take care of another responsibility before heading home. Evelyn paused briefly near the lobby directory and checked the time on her watch. She was early. That was intentional. She always preferred arriving early. Across the lobby, Officer Ryan Mitchell stood beside the security checkpoint greeting visitors with the confidence of someone who believed the building belonged to him. Tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a crisp city police uniform, Ryan had worked security assignments at City Hall for years. Most people knew him. Many avoided disagreeing with him. He liked it that way. As Evelyn approached the security station, Ryan barely looked up at first. "Bag on the table," he said flatly. Evelyn complied without complaint. She placed the folder down and offered a polite smile. "Good morning." Ryan did not return it. He opened the folder and glanced through several documents before his expression changed slightly. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I have a scheduled meeting," Evelyn replied calmly. Ryan looked at the visitor badge request attached to the paperwork and frowned. "With who?" "That information is listed on the appointment form." Ryan studied her for another moment, then looked past her toward the growing line of visitors waiting behind. Something about Evelyn seemed to irritate him, though even he could not have explained why. "I do not see your name on the approved access list," he said. Evelyn remained perfectly composed. "Then perhaps there is a mistake." Ryan laughed quietly. "Or perhaps you are in the wrong building." Several people nearby glanced over after hearing the comment. Evelyn did not react. "Could you verify the appointment?" she asked politely. Ryan folded his arms. No, the answer came too quickly, too confidently. A few employees walking through the lobby slowed their pace to watch. Evelyn noticed, but kept her voice calm. "I traveled here for an official meeting." Ryan stepped slightly closer to the counter. "Ma'am, I'm going to make this simple. You are not entering this building today." The words echoed more loudly than he intended across the marble lobby. Conversations nearby began fading. Visitors turned their heads. One receptionist looked up from her desk. Evelyn stood quietly for a moment, studying the officer's face. Then she asked a simple question. "May I ask why?" Ryan smirked. "Because I said so." The lobby grew noticeably quieter, and somewhere in the building above them, a meeting that depended on Evelyn Carter's arrival was only minutes away from beginning. The quiet that settled across the City Hall lobby after Ryan Mitchell spoke those words felt heavier than the morning rush that had filled the building only minutes earlier. Visitors waiting in line glanced at one another uncertainly, while employees slowed their pace, without pretending otherwise. Everyone could sense something uncomfortable unfolding in front of them. Evelyn Carter remained standing at the security checkpoint with both hands resting lightly on her leather folder. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. In fact, her calmness seemed to frustrate Ryan more than any confrontation could have. He was used to people becoming defensive when challenged. He expected anger, embarrassment, excuses. Instead, Evelyn simply looked at him with a level expression that made him feel as though she was quietly studying him. "Sir," she said politely, "there must be someone who can verify my appointment." Ryan shook his head immediately. "I already told you no." Evelyn glanced briefly toward the elevators at the far end of the lobby. Several city employees were entering them carrying binders and laptops, clearly heading toward meetings upstairs. Somewhere beyond those elevator doors, people were waiting for her arrival. Yet she showed no sign of urgency. "May I speak with a supervisor?" she asked. Ryan laughed under his breath. "You think a supervisor is going to change my answer?" A few people nearby looked uncomfortable. One elderly man waiting for a permit application quietly lowered his newspaper. A receptionist behind the front desk watched openly now. Evelyn remained composed. I simply asked a question. Ryan leaned against the security counter. And I gave you an answer. The officer's tone carried the confidence of someone who believed authority alone settled every discussion. Around them, the marble lobby reflected morning sunlight through the tall glass windows overlooking downtown Raleigh. The building felt modern and important. Yet in that moment, it felt surprisingly small. Evelyn glanced toward a framed photograph hanging on the wall behind Ryan. It showed city officials smiling beside community leaders during a ribbon-cutting ceremony from several years earlier. The slogan beneath the image read, "Serving every citizen with respect." Her eyes lingered on the words for a second before returning to the officer. "That is a nice message," she said softly. Ryan followed her gaze and shrugged. "It is just a picture." Evelyn smiled faintly. Sometimes pictures reveal more than people realize. Ryan rolled his eyes. "Look, ma'am, I do not have time for this." He picked up her visitor request form and held it between two fingers. "You are causing a delay for everyone else." The statement immediately drew attention from the growing line behind her. Several visitors looked confused because Evelyn had done nothing except answer questions. But Ryan spoke with such certainty that some people accepted his version of events without thinking. Evelyn noticed that too. She had seen it before. The way authority could shape perception when nobody challenged it. Still, she remained calm. "What exactly is the problem with my request?" she asked. Ryan glanced down at the paperwork again. His eyes paused briefly on her name before he looked away. "The problem is that I do not believe you belong in this meeting." The sentence slipped out before he could stop himself. A young clerk walking past the checkpoint immediately slowed down. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "You do not believe?" she repeated. Ryan folded his arms again. "That is correct." For the first time, a faint murmur moved through the lobby, because everyone suddenly understood this was no longer about paperwork. And somewhere upstairs, a conference room full of city leaders had just begun asking why Evelyn Carter had not arrived yet. The atmosphere inside City Hall continued to tighten with every passing minute. What had started as an ordinary security checkpoint conversation now held the attention of nearly everyone moving through the lobby. Visitors waiting in line no longer pretended to look away. Employees carrying folders slowed near the elevators. Even the receptionist behind the front desk had stopped typing. Yet the person who seemed least affected by the growing tension was Evelyn Carter. She stood quietly beside the security counter, her leather folder still resting where she had placed it nearly 15 minutes earlier. There was no frustration in her face, no visible embarrassment, only patience. Ryan Mitchell found that strangely irritating. Most people reacted when challenged. Most people either argued or left. Evelyn did neither. "You are still here," Ryan said. Evelyn offered a polite smile. "You are still refusing to verify an appointment." A few people nearby exchanged looks. Ryan folded his arms. "I do not need to verify anything." "That is an interesting policy," Evelyn replied softly. "I was not aware individual officers decided who belongs in public buildings." The comment drew a faint reaction from several employees passing through the lobby. Ryan immediately straightened. "I decide who enters this building when security concerns exist." Evelyn nodded slightly. "And what security concern do I present?" Ryan opened his mouth, but paused. For a brief moment, he realized he had never actually answered the question. Instead, he glanced toward the line of visitors behind her. "The concern is that you are delaying city operations." An older woman waiting nearby shook her head quietly. Everyone standing there had watched the entire exchange. They knew exactly who had created the delay. Evelyn noticed the reaction, but said nothing. She simply looked toward the elevators again. Somewhere upstairs, a meeting was beginning without her. In a conference room on the 6th floor, several city officials sat around a polished oak table reviewing schedules. Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. "Has anyone heard from Evelyn Carter?" he asked. Around the table, confused expressions appeared. A city attorney looked down at her phone. No response. Bennett frowned. "She is never late." Back in the lobby, Ryan finally picked up Evelyn's appointment request again. His eyes moved across the page before stopping at a name listed under meeting authorization. Something about it bothered him. Before he could study it further, a young administrative assistant hurried from the elevator carrying a stack of documents. She glanced toward the security desk and suddenly froze. Her eyes widened the moment she saw Evelyn standing there. "Miss Carter?" she asked. The entire lobby seemed to pause. Evelyn turned toward her. "Good morning." The assistant looked confused. "Why are you still downstairs?" Ryan immediately stepped forward. "She does not have approved access." The assistant stared at him as if he had spoken another language. Then she looked back at Evelyn, visibly nervous now. "They have been waiting for you upstairs." Ryan felt a small knot form in his stomach. For the first time that morning, uncertainty quietly entered the conversation. And far above them, several important people were beginning to wonder why the woman they had personally invited had not yet arrived. The young administrative assistant looked increasingly uncomfortable as dozens of eyes shifted between her, Evelyn Carter, and Officer Ryan Mitchell. The lobby had become unusually quiet now. Even people entering through the front doors slowed down after sensing that something important was unfolding. Ryan quickly recovered his composure and stepped in front of the security desk. "If she is expected upstairs, someone should have informed security," he said firmly. The assistant blinked. "They did." Ryan frowned. "No one contacted me." The assistant hesitated. "The authorization was submitted 3 days ago." A murmur moved through the lobby. Ryan immediately reached for the visitor form again and scanned the paperwork more carefully. His expression remained confident, but a small crack of uncertainty had begun to appear beneath it. Evelyn watched silently. She did not interrupt. She did not explain. She simply waited. "Who exactly are you meeting?" Ryan asked again. The question sounded different this time. Less authoritative. More curious. Evelyn smiled faintly. "I believe that information is already on the document in your hand." Several nearby employees exchanged knowing looks. Ryan disliked the feeling that he was no longer controlling the conversation. "You could answer the question directly." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "I could." The answer hung in the air. Then she said nothing else. The silence irritated him even more. Across the lobby, the receptionist suddenly received a phone call. She listened for several seconds before glancing toward Evelyn. Her eyes widened slightly. "Yes, she is still downstairs," the receptionist said into the phone. "No, she has not been allowed upstairs yet." The call ended. A few seconds later, another phone rang at a nearby desk. Then another. Employees began whispering among themselves. Something was happening somewhere above them. On the 6th floor, Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett stood near the conference room windows staring at his watch. Around the table sat department heads, legal advisors, and city administrators. None of them looked pleased. "She has still not arrived?" Bennett asked. A staff member shook her head. "No, sir." Bennett frowned deeply. "That is impossible." He immediately picked up his phone and walked into the hallway. Back in the lobby, Ryan noticed the growing attention and doubled down. "Ma'am, I am asking one final time. If you do not have proper authorization, you need to leave the building." The statement caused visible discomfort among several employees standing nearby. They knew the administrative assistant had already confirmed the appointment. Yet Ryan continued speaking as though none of that mattered. Evelyn calmly picked up her leather folder from the counter. For a brief moment, Ryan seemed satisfied. He assumed she was finally giving up. Instead, she simply held the folder against her side and looked toward the elevator bank. "Interesting," she said softly. "What is?" Ryan asked. Evelyn's eyes remained fixed on the elevator doors. How quickly people reveal themselves when they believe there will be no consequences. Before Ryan could respond, one of the elevator doors opened. 3 senior city officials stepped into the lobby at the same time. The moment they saw Evelyn Carter standing beside the security checkpoint, all 3 immediately changed direction and began walking straight toward her. The 3 officials moved across the lobby with a sense of urgency that immediately captured everyone's attention. Conversation stopped. Visitors stepped aside. Employees turned to watch. The first was Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett. Beside him walked City Attorney Melissa Grant and City Hall Operations Director Patricia Holmes. These were not people who normally rushed anywhere. Yet all 3 crossed the marble floor directly toward Evelyn Carter without hesitation. Ryan Mitchell felt the atmosphere change immediately. "Good morning," Evelyn said calmly as they approached. Deputy Mayor Bennett looked genuinely relieved. "Miss Carter, thank goodness." The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Ryan blinked. The administrative assistant standing nearby lowered her eyes. Several employees exchanged nervous glances. Bennett continued speaking. "We have been trying to find out what happened." Evelyn glanced briefly toward the security checkpoint. I have been here for a while. The statement was delivered so calmly that it somehow felt more powerful than an accusation. Bennett followed her gaze toward Ryan. The deputy mayor's expression shifted slightly. Officer Mitchell, he said carefully, why has Ms. Carter not been escorted upstairs? Ryan immediately straightened his posture. There was an access issue. Patricia Holmes frowned. An access issue? Ryan nodded confidently. Her authorization could not be verified. Melissa Grant looked directly at the visitor form still sitting on the counter. The authorization was approved last week. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it again. Around the lobby, people listened closely now. What had started as curiosity was becoming something else. Concern. Evelyn remained silent. She did not help Ryan explain. She did not challenge him. She simply allowed the facts to speak for themselves. Bennett looked toward Evelyn apologetically. I sincerely apologize for this delay. Ryan felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The deputy mayor did not apologize to ordinary visitors. He certainly did not apologize publicly. It is all right, Evelyn replied. The morning has been educational. Several employees nearby exchanged uneasy looks. Bennett frowned slightly. Educational. Evelyn smiled faintly. I learned quite a bit about how some citizens are treated when they walk through these doors. The words settled heavily across the lobby. Ryan immediately felt dozens of eyes turning toward him. Melissa Grant glanced toward the security cameras mounted above the entrance. Then she looked back at Evelyn. Would you still be willing to attend the meeting? Evelyn nodded. That depends. Bennett looked surprised. On what? Evelyn adjusted the folder beneath her arm. Whether the city is genuinely interested in hearing uncomfortable truths. Nobody answered immediately. The question seemed larger than the situation unfolding in front of them. Then something unexpected happened. Patricia Holmes suddenly studied Evelyn more carefully. Her eyes widened slightly. Wait, she said softly. Bennett turned toward her. What is it? Patricia looked almost embarrassed that she had not recognized Evelyn sooner. You never told him? She asked quietly. Evelyn smiled. I was never asked. Ryan frowned. Asked what? Patricia looked toward him with an expression that instantly made his confidence weaken. For the first time that morning, the operations director seemed genuinely shocked by what had happened. Officer Mitchell, she said carefully. Do you have any idea who Ms. Carter is? The question echoed through the lobby. Ryan looked from one official to another. No one smiled. No one laughed. Suddenly, the certainty he had carried all morning began slipping away. And for the first time since Evelyn Carter walked through the front doors of City Hall, Ryan Mitchell realized there might be something he did not know. The question hung over the City Hall lobby like a sudden change in weather. Do you have any idea who Ms. Carter is? Officer Ryan Mitchell looked from Patricia Holmes to Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett and then back toward Evelyn Carter. The confidence that had carried him through the entire morning was beginning to erode. Yet pride still refused to let him retreat. No, Ryan answered cautiously. Should I? Nobody replied immediately. That silence felt different from the others. It was not uncomfortable. It was revealing. Evelyn stood calmly beside the security checkpoint, holding her leather folder, while visitors and employees watched from every corner of the lobby. Some had completely forgotten why they came to City Hall in the first place. Bennett finally exhaled. Officer Mitchell, he said carefully, Ms. Carter is not here to request services from the city. Ryan frowned. Then why is she here? Patricia Holmes exchanged a glance with the city attorney before answering. She is here to evaluate them. The lobby became completely still. Ryan stared at her. Evaluate what? Melissa Grant stepped forward. The city. Several employees immediately looked at one another. Even people who did not understand exactly what that meant could hear the significance in her voice. Ryan shook his head. I do not understand. Evelyn finally spoke. That much has been obvious for a while. The comment was delivered politely, but it landed with surprising force. Bennett looked toward Evelyn apologetically. Ms. Carter was appointed 6 months ago to lead a state oversight initiative reviewing municipal ethics, citizen treatment standards, public access procedures, and discrimination complaints across local government agencies. The words seemed to echo across the marble lobby. A receptionist gasped softly. One employee near the elevators actually lowered a folder from her hands in shock. Ryan simply stared. State oversight? Bennett nodded. Yes. Patricia continued. Your building was selected for a confidential evaluation. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Suddenly, every conversation from the morning replayed in his mind. Every assumption, every comment, every decision. Evelyn remained completely composed. She showed no satisfaction, no anger, no desire to embarrass him. Somehow that made the situation even worse. The purpose of the review, she explained calmly, is to understand how citizens are treated when employees believe nobody important is watching. Nobody in the lobby moved. Nobody spoke. Even the sounds of ringing phones seemed distant now. Ryan slowly looked around the room. Employees who had once avoided eye contact with Evelyn were now looking directly at her. Not because of fear, because of respect. Bennett glanced toward the security cameras mounted above the entrance. The irony is difficult to ignore, he admitted quietly. What irony? Ryan asked. Melissa Grant answered before anyone else could. The evaluation officially began the moment Ms. Carter entered the building. The words struck like a thunderclap. Ryan's face lost color. Evelyn gently adjusted the folder beneath her arm. I never needed special treatment, she said softly. I only wanted the same treatment every citizen deserves. Across the lobby, several employees lowered their eyes. They understood exactly what she meant. The review they had prepared for over months had not started upstairs in a conference room. It had started right here at the front door. And without realizing it, Officer Ryan Mitchell had just provided the most important demonstration of the entire day. For several long seconds, nobody inside the City Hall lobby spoke. The revelation had changed everything. The woman many people assumed was simply another visitor had been quietly observing the very system she was invited to evaluate. Employees stood frozen beneath the bright lobby lights while visitors watched a scene that felt more like a lesson than a confrontation. Evelyn Carter remained exactly where she had been standing all morning. She had not changed her posture. She had not raised her voice. The only thing that had changed was what everyone now understood about her presence. Officer Ryan Mitchell slowly looked toward the security checkpoint, where Evelyn's paperwork still rested on the counter. Suddenly, every detail he had dismissed seemed important. Every document, every request, every opportunity he had ignored. Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett broke the silence first. Ms. Carter, he said carefully, I want you to know this situation does not reflect the values this city claims to uphold. Evelyn looked at him calmly. Values are not measured by mission statements, she replied softly. They are measured by behavior. The words settled heavily across the lobby. Several employees lowered their eyes. Above them, banners hanging from the walls displayed phrases about service, inclusion, and public trust. For the first time, many people seemed to be reading those words differently. Melissa Grant glanced toward the security cameras mounted throughout the entrance hall. The entire interaction was recorded, she said quietly. Ryan felt another wave of discomfort. Until that moment, cameras had always represented protection. Now they represented accountability. Evelyn nodded slightly. That is fortunate. Bennett looked surprised. Fortunate. Evelyn smiled faintly. The purpose of an evaluation is not punishment. It is clarity. Her answer caught many people off guard. There was no bitterness in her voice. No desire for revenge. She spoke like someone focused on a larger purpose. A purpose bigger than one difficult morning. Patricia Holmes stepped closer. You knew who you were the entire time, she said. Evelyn nodded. Of course. Then why did you not identify yourself immediately? Patricia asked. The question seemed to interest everyone in the lobby. Evelyn paused for a moment before answering. Because most citizens cannot. Silence returned once more. The simplicity of the answer made it impossible to ignore. Ryan looked away. For the first time all morning, he seemed unable to find words. Evelyn continued calmly. If respectful treatment depends on titles, credentials, or influence, then the system is already failing. Nearby, the elderly man with the newspaper slowly folded it and nodded to himself. Several employees exchanged thoughtful looks. Bennett exhaled deeply. He understood now why the state had selected Evelyn to lead the review. She was not merely inspecting procedures. She was exposing character. Then another elevator opened behind the group. More senior officials stepped into the lobby carrying folders and tablets. The moment they saw Evelyn, they approached immediately. One of them extended a hand. Ms. Carter, the review committee is assembled and waiting. Evelyn accepted the greeting politely. Then she looked once more toward Ryan Mitchell. Not with anger. Not with triumph. Simply with quiet understanding. and somehow that expression made him feel smaller than any public criticism ever could. The elevator doors closed behind several officials as they accompanied Evelyn Carter toward the upper floors, but before she stepped inside, Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett quietly asked if she would be willing to review one more item. Evelyn paused and looked toward him. What item? Bennett exchanged a glance with Melissa Grant before answering. The footage. Ryan Mitchell immediately understood what he meant. Every interaction from the morning had been recorded by multiple cameras positioned throughout the entrance lobby. The realization settled heavily across the room. Not because anyone doubted what had happened, because now everyone would see it exactly as it occurred. Evelyn considered the request for a moment and then nodded. Very well. Within minutes, a conference room monitor displayed the recordings. Several department heads, legal advisors, and senior administrators gathered around the screen while Ryan remained near the back of the room. The footage began with Evelyn entering City Hall carrying nothing more than a folder and a scheduled appointment. It showed her polite greeting, her calm questions, her repeated requests for verification. Then it showed every response, every dismissal, every assumption, every opportunity to treat her with basic respect that had been ignored. Nobody interrupted the video. Nobody defended what they were seeing. The room grew quieter with each passing minute. When the recording finally ended, the silence felt even louder than before. Melissa Grant slowly closed her notebook. The concerning part is not a single comment, she said carefully. It is the pattern. Several officials nodded. Evelyn remained composed. Patterns are what evaluations are designed to identify. Bennett looked troubled. How many other citizens experienced this and simply left? Nobody answered. The question hung over the room like a shadow. Ryan lowered his eyes. For the first time that day, he was no longer thinking about rules, procedures, or authority. He was thinking about people. The people who never received a second chance to explain themselves. The people who did not have city officials waiting upstairs. The people who could not reveal an important title because they did not have one. Evelyn quietly gathered her folder. Most citizens enter public buildings expecting fairness, she said softly. Many leave believing they were invisible. The statement landed heavily across the conference table. One administrator rubbed his forehead. Another stared at the paused image of the lobby screen. Bennett finally stood. This review was supposed to evaluate policies. Evelyn looked at him. Policies matter. Then she added, but character matters more. Nobody disagreed. Outside the conference room windows, downtown Raleigh continued moving through an ordinary Monday morning. Traffic flowed through intersections. People walked along sidewalks. Life continued as usual. Yet inside City Hall, something had shifted. Not because a secret had been revealed. Not because someone powerful had entered the building. But because an entire group of leaders had just witnessed how easily dignity could be denied when nobody believed they would be held accountable. And as Evelyn prepared to begin the formal review she had come to conduct, everyone in the room understood the most important findings had already appeared long before the meeting officially started. By late afternoon, the formal review meeting had concluded, but the impact of the day continued to echo through every hallway of City Hall. Employees moved more quietly than usual. Conversations carried a different tone. People who had spent years walking past one another without much thought now seemed more aware of how small interactions could shape public trust. Inside the conference room, final notes were being organized while department leaders discussed recommendations that would likely influence city procedures for years to come. Evelyn Carter gathered her folder and prepared to leave. She had accomplished the purpose of her visit, though not in the way anyone expected when the morning began. Deputy Mayor Charles Bennett walked beside her toward the elevators. I hope you know this city will learn from today, he said sincerely. Evelyn smiled politely. Learning begins when people are willing to look honestly at themselves. Bennett nodded. He understood exactly what she meant. When the elevator doors opened onto the lobby, several employees looked up immediately. Some offered respectful smiles. Others simply nodded. The atmosphere felt entirely different from the one Evelyn had encountered hours earlier. Near the front entrance, Officer Ryan Mitchell remained at the security checkpoint. He looked tired now, not physically, but emotionally. The certainty that once surrounded him had been replaced by reflection. As Evelyn approached the exit, Ryan stepped away from the counter. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Visitors continued moving through the building. Phones rang in distant offices. Outside, Sunlight stretched across the downtown streets. Finally, Ryan cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter." Evelyn stopped and turned toward him. "Yes." Ryan hesitated. It was obvious he was searching for the right words. "I was wrong." The admission came quietly. No excuses followed it. No attempt to justify what had happened. Just 4 simple words. Several nearby employees looked up in surprise. Evelyn studied him for a moment. Then she nodded once. "Thank you for saying that." Ryan lowered his eyes. "I thought I was protecting the building." Evelyn held her folder against her side. "The best way to protect a public building is to make sure every citizen feels welcome walking into it." The statement settled between them. Ryan nodded slowly. For the first time all day, he seemed to truly hear what she was saying. Evelyn then turned toward the glass doors and stepped outside into the warm North Carolina afternoon. The city moved around her with its usual energy. Cars passed. People crossed intersections. Life continued forward. Yet somewhere behind those doors, a lesson would remain long after the paperwork was filed away. Because the most important discovery of the day had never been Evelyn's title or authority. It was the reminder that dignity should never depend on status, influence, or recognition. As she walked down the sidewalk and disappeared into the crowd, the words she had spoken earlier seemed to linger in the air. The way you treat people when you think they have no power tells the truth about who you are. And that day, an entire building learned that character is revealed long before credentials are.